My name's Jenny Day, and my colleagues Vicky Bates and Steve Clayton, who are luckily for them on leave at the moment. And I'm going to talk about some reflections that we had about interventions that we put in place to improve engagement on the programme while we switched to online delivery during the pandemic, and to focus in particular on something we set up, which was the International Students Club. So we all had a terrible shock with the pandemic. I came in on the Monday and I was asked to put the entire programme online by the Wednesday. So it's been a stressful time. I think we need to acknowledge that. We used the usual digital technologies. I'm sure we all had to improve our skills over this time period. But some of the things we thought about as well as delivering the content were the social interactions between students. And some of the difficulties we faced were teaching skills in data analyses and statistics. So we just introduced some things which we're going to continue, now that we're back to face-to-face teaching. But I wanted to focus in particularly on international students because there were particular challenges with that, and then this International Students Club that we set up. So we used, I'm sure everybody's used very similar kind of collaborative technologies, and we've all improved our skills. And we will continue with one of these. One of the things we introduced for the statistical analysis sessions were our buddies. So all students had a personal contact that they could get in touch with and have a Zoom session with to lead them through the statistical analyses. And this has worked fantastically well, and we're going to carry on with this because it really improved students' confidence. And in the classroom, it's easy for us to see you struggling and go and give people assistance, but online that was very difficult. But actually, it's one of the things we're going to continue. So international students, some stats, 22% of the student population in the UK are international students, and the economic benefits of international students in the UK has been estimated at nearly £30 billion. So there is quite a lot of literature talking about like numbers of students and financial aspects of it, but there's a lot more to it that international students contribute to universities. And but in Liverpool, 31% of students, these are the last figures that are confined, 10,000 international students at Liverpool from more than 171 countries, and it's estimated that they contribute more than £2 million to Liverpool's economy. Loads of things come out of the literature. I'm sure you're aware of all of this, and there's some references at the end. So now I'm going to move on to talk about the International Students Club. And what happened was I've always done specific sessions for international students on the UK health systems and public health in the UK. But I felt during the pandemic that international students were particularly affected by social isolation. So a number of our students had funding from, say, Chevening to do a scholarship, and their funding bodies insisted that they came to the UK, even though the programme had to be online due to the lockdown. So I was just really, really concerned that people would feel very isolated and that we need to do something extra. So we set up the International Students Club, and in these sessions, we signposted students to university support systems and services and gave people practical advice, a lot of questions about the pandemic and things and getting tests. I did my usual session on an overview of the NHS public health in the UK context and introduced the students to an acronym buster. So anyone who works in health will know how much people love acronyms. Sometimes if you listen to one of our sessions, it'd be very difficult to know what people were talking about unless you could decipher the acronyms. And what was interesting was that actually the international students recommended the acronym Buster to UK students who were struggling with it as well. So I thought that was really nice to see. Gave people general advice and discussed, some of the issues that are particularly relevant to study in the UK that might be different. So things like academic integrity, group work. Some people had not done group work in the past. And I asked students, what would you like to cover in more detail? And one of the things that came out was critical evaluation. So we did a lot more on critical evaluation. We looked at published papers and work through some critical evaluation with the students, which they found really useful. And I also gave specific advice on MPH assessments. We met about 4 times over the semester, and the sessions were between 1 and 2 hours long. And I introduced this in 2021, and students from that cohort came back to speak to this year's cohort, which they found very useful. What were the outcomes? We had improved engagement in class. So in the modules that I taught, I noticed there was a real increase in engagement, and I've actually got some data to show you that showcases this, and other module leaders noticed the same thing as well. There was a real notable empowerment among students, so they really seemed to become much more confident about studying on the MPH. They set up their own WhatsApp group, they socialised with each other. It was a really supportive group, and there was really good cohesion between the international students, which was great to see, and I think that really helped them. And there was improved academic outcomes as well. So in semester 2, there was a notable increase in the number of students who had merits and distinctions. So how would you show that the engagement is improved in class? Well, this is one of the million-dollar questions for all of us. But in some ways, this is one of the things that the pandemic gave us an advantage over, because the sessions were recorded. So what I did was I went back and looked at the recordings in week 3 on the epidemiology and statistic module that I teach on, and there was like an hour-long tutorial. And in week 4, this was the first week after I introduced the International Students Club. So I looked at the interactions, and I tend to run a very interactional kind of mode of teaching. So there's a lot of questions that I ask, a lot of discussion in the class. So I just went through the videos and just recorded a number of contributions that the students had made during the session. So week 3 was before the first session of International Students Club, and you can see for UK students, the mean number of contributions was 2.9 per student, and for international students it was much lower, at 0.25 per student. And then after the International Students Club, you can see that the contributions from International Students Club, the impression was that they increased, but actually when I went back and quantified this, it increased to 6.2 per student, which was fantastic to see. And interestingly, actually, the UK student contributions also increased, possibly because people were contributing more across the session. And we also did an anonymised questionnaire with students to see what they thought about it. So we asked students, how did they find the sessions? So these were some of the qualitative feedback that we got. The International Students Club meeting made it more easier to settle in with the course. It was by these meetings I started to get a hang of the modules and their expectations on the assignments. The pieces of advice I received helped in my readings and assignments. I feel confident expressing my opinions and concerns and enjoyed the overall interaction. Through this club, we got close to each other and started interacting with each other. It was a great way to develop friendship. So I think this is a brilliant quote which summarised my impression of what was happening. Interactions with staff. So this club was an icebreaker where I could ask any doubts regarding the programme or regarding any issues that I faced as an international student. This helped us to get more comfortable sharing our queries and build a good relationship with the MPH programme lead, who also assisted us to successfully understand and complete all of the modules. And a number of students said that their confidence had increased. The club helped me build my confidence and improve my marks. By having a chance to clarify many aspects of the assignment requirements, I'll be able to improve my grade. So that was across the board, really. They did make some suggestions for ways that we could improve it. So to have contributions from all of the other module leaders, to identify areas of weakness and focus on them. Career guidance. We do have employability sessions, but the students, they're over the summer, so the students haven't seen those yet. But one thing that did come out was to improve integration with other students in the class, so the UK students. And when we came back face to face in semester 2, it was notable that the international students they knew each other well by then and tended to sit together. And that's something I think we need to think about moving forward into next year. So the future, we're going to continue the digital technology interventions that improved engagement, continue with the R Buddies, that was really successful, continue and develop the International Students Club and work with students to do that. And the students are going to develop their own International Students Programme handbook to accompany the general handbook. And just again to mention that we all need to recover. We've been through a traumatic experience. Many of us have worked really, really long hours for over a long period. And I think it's really important just to acknowledge that. So I've got just a few references and any questions. I hope that was to time.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, sorry.
I was
Go
bang
on,
on
David.
10 minutes. Thank you. Perfect.
Phew.
So does anyone have any questions for Jenny? I've got one if that's okay to start us off. You mentioned very early on about the student buddies and the students had personal contact. Was their buddy a fellow student or a member of staff? And what do they have a certain allotted amount of time that they could access that buddy, or was it kind of open for interpretation?
It was specifically for teaching statistics. So the thing was that in class we'd have like helpers in class who go around and help people if they get stuck. So if they don't know what button to press or how to run the analyses. But online we realised we wouldn't be able to tell who was struggling, who wasn't. So it was the same people who'd be in the face-to-face session. So it was staff, and we have PGRs and postdocs who help with that as well. But the difference was that they helped online and tried to spot people who were struggling. But the idea was that anybody could email their buddy anytime, just say, I'm stuck on this or I don't understand this. And quite a lot of times with some students, they'd have like a Zoom session where the student will run the analyses and then the tutor will give them a session. So it was as needed. Now, in some ways, this was quite good because some students didn't need it. They could just run, obviously there's a lot of guidance in the sessions themselves and in the materials that we provide. But it's just that some students really lack confidence with it. So I think having that buddy just gave them someone to reach out to and just helped improve the confidence and the skills.
Great. Thank you. I think Helen has a question.
Yes, thank you, David. Thank you, Jenny. That was really interesting. It was one observation that I made from this was also that you obviously got post that international club a good increase in participation from the international students, and I presume that you had that knock-on of that, the fact that the international students were engaging so much more also then seemed to trigger off a better engagement with the home students. Looking at that slide, there seemed to be, it was almost as if home students hold back because the internationals aren't saying very much or contributing, but there was just overall engagement throughout from both groups of students that was massively improved just from that intervention.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we don't know. The numbers are quite small, so there are, limitations in terms of like quantitative analysis and things. But yeah, it's possible that did seem to happen, and I think interaction between international students and UK students did improve as well when we got face to face. But there is like if you empower one group, there is a potential issue with that, but then you isolate that group from the rest. So I think that's something that needs to be really carefully managed. But yeah, definitely engagement was improved in week 4. But what we don't know is would that have happened anyway? If there was no impact. So it's possible, but we don't know for sure.
Okay, and we also use WhatsApp app groups. We encourage our students to use WhatsApp. So in all our postgrad modules, or certainly the ones that I run, I encourage them because that's a very good way of encouraging communication and engaging with each other. I mean, sometimes you hear about what they put on an app. I mean, we're not included, but sometimes you start to think, oh, these aren't the sorts of things that we really want to know that you're discussing, moans and groans about an assessment or something, or panic. They start to, I don't know whether you found that, but we certainly pick up a student posing a question that then has the wrong effect of panicking everybody else. And people then sometimes withdraw from that WhatsApp group because they feel that it's causing them unnecessary anxiety levels.
Yeah, I think WhatsApp groups are fascinating, and I'd love to do research project just on that. And you know, people have sometimes put things in assignments and said they've asked somebody on the WhatsApp group, and it's you know, for an assignment. So at the beginning of the program, we always say the WhatsApp group, whatever you want to do, that's up to you, that's fine. But remember, the WhatsApp group is not marking your assignments. So, but I think for this, I just think I'm not sure that group that different, like there's a group for the whole program, a WhatsApp group and a cohort, but this was a separate group for the international students, which I think they found very empowering. And like, I didn't tell them to set that up, that was off their own bat kind of thing. And I think they found it useful in that way. But yeah, WhatsApp groups is a whole other issue, I think.
Yeah, thank you.